And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage co-founder and vice president of Keep Memory Alive, Camille Ruvo.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm so happy to see all of you here today. I wanted to share a story with you that inspired what I'm going to share with you today. So the other day, I was standing in my backyard on one of those rare Nevada mornings. There was no wind, warm sun, and it was a peaceful kind of stillness that makes you pause, breathe, and truly just take in the moment. And off in the distance, I noticed a golf tournament was underway. My backyard is adjacent to a golf course, and it turned out to be the LPGA. And I stood there watching these remarkable women, so focused, so powerful, so poised, and so determined. And I was genuinely moved. In that moment, I thought about how many of us go through life as observers. We watch from the sidelines, admiring those brave enough to get in the game. And then I thought of who is going to be in this room today. Of the women gathered here today. This is not a room full of observers. This is a room full of doers, leaders, women who have already hopped the fence and said, I want to make a difference, and how can I make a difference? Now, I joke that I could have hopped that fence and joined the LPGA that morning, but anyone who has ever seen me play golf would know that that would not have gone so well. But the truth is, in that moment, it reminded me that you don't have to be perfect to step in. You just have to be willing. And everyone in this room has shown that willingness in your communities, in your careers, and in the lives that you have all touched. Now, it's hard to believe that 5 years ago we launched the Cleveland Clinic Women's Prevention Program through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. And at the heart of that mission is the incredible Maria Shriver. We would not be here today without her vision and determination, and that determination remains, to shine a light on the importance of women's brain health, because Maria understood. She understood it best that over 60% of Alzheimer's patients are women, and that over 80% of caregivers are women. The strides that we have made here at the Cleveland Clinic Ruvo Center for Brain Health, both in treating hundreds of women and contributing to groundbreaking research, are remarkable. Plus, the Women's Prevention Program provides great comfort of what we didn't have 5 short years ago, which is a baseline for our brain. So, it only makes sense that we, as women, not only get in the game, but we lead it. Let's prioritize our health, especially our brain health, so we can continue to lead and do and to inspire generations to come. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Executive Vice President, Enterprise Chief of Staff, Dr. Beri Ridgeway.
Good afternoon, and so amazing to see everyone here today. Thank you so much for being here. It is my honor to join you here in Las Vegas today, home to one of the most innovative and impactful centers of its kind, the Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. Since its founding, the center has stood as a beacon of hope for individuals and families navigating some of the most complex neurological conditions. And what sets this center apart is not only its state-of-the-art clinical care, but the extraordinary way in which it integrates that care with world-class research right here under one roof. This is a place where science and compassion meet, where neurologists, researchers, therapists, and caregivers work side by side to advance knowledge, accelerate new treatments, and most importantly, improve the lives of patients and families. It's through this work that we've deepened our understanding of Alzheimer's and related disorders and the critical importance of identifying risk factors and advancing strategies for risk reduction and mitigation. And we're also learning what differentiates outcomes for women and men, something that's so critically important. And thanks to all of you and philanthropic investment at the earliest stages, we've been able to launch impactful studies that have since attracted major, and I mean major, NIH funding and institutional funding. This is where the power of research translates into proactive care, shaping how we detect, prevent, and ultimately change the course of age-related diseases. And this is truly groundbreaking work, and the visionary behind it is Maria Shriver. She not only helped launch this center, but also recognize the differences that exist in outcomes with men and women and the enormous gap that we have, not just in clinical care, but in research between men and women. She also brought forward then an equally innovative idea for Cleveland Clinic, the creation of a comprehensive women's health and research center that is opened in Cleveland. We're proud to celebrate, of course, the 5 years here, truly amazing, and the 1 year of the Comprehensive Women's Health Center in Cleveland. And in that short time, we have been so proud to serve so many women who need care. So for unique patients in this 1 year, we have served almost 10,000. And that's really fielding thousands of calls and navigation. Maria Shriver's advocacy in Alzheimer's disease has now evolved into a much broader movement for women's health, where she continues to be a leading voice addressing the historic underfunding of research in this space. She is the founder of the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. She serves as the chief visionary and strategic partner for women's health at Cleveland Clinic. She publishes an inspiring Sunday paper each week and, because she's not busy enough, just completed a sold-out book tour for her best-selling new release, I'm Maria. Please join me in welcoming a true force of nature, Maria Shriver.
What was going on. Good morning, I'm Maria, and I want to thank all of you for being here at this historic event, the WAM Forum, where we're honoring you for being involved with all of us and being involved in making a difference, as Camille said. We're honoring new researchers, and we're also honoring all the other researchers who we've been supporting since our inception. We're honoring advocacy and caregiving, we're honoring philanthropy, and we're honoring corporate support, because we need all of that to continue to make a difference in this space. I'm so grateful to Camille and Larry, who jumped onto this idea 5 years ago when I said I want to do a prevention center, and everybody told me prevention and Alzheimer's don't belong in the same breath. But I knew that they were wrong, because they had told me the same thing about women. And so usually when someone tells me I'm wrong, it just kind of makes me dig in even more. So I have 4 brothers, and so that's the way I've been rolling since birth. So anyway, Camille and Larry didn't say you're wrong. They said, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And I'm so proud to be partners with the Cleveland Clinic, who is expanding this concept, who started the Women's Comprehensive Health Center to focus on women at midlife, at perimenopause, menopause, and beyond, who recognized that doctors needed to do better when it came to women's health, and that doctors could only do better if they had the research to help guide them forward on the path. So we have a lot at stake when it comes to women's health and research. We have a lot at stake when it comes to Alzheimer's research. But I want to tell you one quick story, and I'm not doing this to drop any, just guess where I was, but I'm doing it to tell you where I was, because I was in Rome a couple of hours ago, and I went with 2 girlfriends who called and said, do you want to go to the inaugural Mass of the first American Pope? And I'm like, duh. I'm an American Catholic, and I'm always down for an adventure. So I said, but I do have to be at 7 a.m. in Vegas. And they're like, okay, we'll make it happen. And when I was there at the Vatican, we got this beautiful tour through the Sistine Chapel, and they were talking about the conclave, and they told the story, the cardinal, about once all the cardinals had come together and decided who the next pope should be, the cardinal who was in charge of all the other cardinals, doesn't matter, would go up to the person who had just been elected and stand before him and say, you've just been chosen. Can you accept this assignment? Will you accept this assignment? And at that moment, that person has to really look deep in their soul and their heart and be able to say without a shadow of a doubt, yes, I'm going to step forward and take on this extraordinary responsibility. And I said, has anybody ever said no? And they're like, well, we don't know, because then everything in the conclave is secret. But the point is that this man said yes. He had been preparing for it his whole life, and that he would have to continue to say yes every single moment that he wakes up. And it made me think a lot as I left there and as I watched him come in his Pope Mobile and say this Mass. Made me think a lot about what I say yes to in my life on a daily basis, but what I say yes to on a bigger level. And it recommitted me really to my yeses as I flew back across from Rome to here and landed here at midnight last night. And it made me be so proud to be here with all of you this morning, because this is my yes. And I know so many of you in this room have been saying yes to research, yes to advocacy, yes to treatment of patients, yes to philanthropy, yes to making a difference every single day of your life. And so I'm really proud to be in a room of people who say yes every single day. And I'm just super excited to be celebrating the work of this organization and of the researchers who are the bedrock of what we do. We can't do better care unless we have better research, and women need better research. It's why we launched and we need it at every decade of our lives, because we're behind at every decade of our lives, and that's my yes as well. So I want to start by introducing the real reason we're here. We talk about research and advocacy, and one is nothing without the other. They're all equally important, but I want to shine a light right now on the we're going to show a video first about all the research we've done before I introduce the research that we're about to fund today. So take a look at the video.
Some of the things that we know about women's brain health are just shocking.
2/3 of people with Alzheimer's disease are women.
The lifetime risk of Alzheimer's is 1 in 5 for a woman, 1 in 10 for a man.
Pathology likely starts
2 decades before we see any symptoms.
We still do not know, is it an enzyme? Is it a molecular change? Is it a mutation? Is it the environment?
Maria, Shriver, and WAM have moved the needle in the field of Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's prevention for women.
Now that they're part of WAM at Cleveland Clinic, their work is only becoming more impactful.
They're raising the awareness, but they're also raising the money.
WAM funding is the innovation platform from which significant advances can be made.
We received a pilot grant and a seed grant from WAM. We're able to measure estrogen activity in the living human brain successfully for the first time.
The WAM grant let us dig into which microbes are actually causing the disease, and this will help us someday design new microbiome-based therapies like probiotics.
My WAM grant basically was used to test out the idea that sleep disturbances will make the manifestation of Alzheimer's disease faster in women versus men.
My WAM grant allowed me to create these dementia-friendly online worship services.
My funding from WAM consists of understanding how sleep and diet impact brain health in people who are on a controlled ketogenic diet.
Our work showed that when women receive hormone therapy, at the time of menopausal symptoms, there is a 40 to 60% reduction in risk.
What we showed for the first time is that simple lifestyle changes can often stop and even reverse the progression of early stage Alzheimer's.
What we found is that the more severe the sleep apnea symptoms, the greater the tau burden.
We're also finding that just sleep complaints can really indicate how much pathology people have in their brain.
My project is looking at the connection between women's Alzheimer's risk and spatial navigation.
We are using the protein and metabolite in the blood or brain to diagnose Alzheimer's disease earlier.
The Women's Alzheimer's Movement Prevention and Research Center at Cleveland Clinic started out as a pilot program.
Without that funding, I wouldn't have been able to complete my study and wouldn't be talking to you right now.
We're all working towards the same bigger ultimate goal.
Each one of us is going to just add one drop into this bucket, and that entire bucket is going to lead to the cure.
45% of dementia cases may be preventable. When I first met Maria, no one believed any of that. Women's Alzheimer's movement changed everything.
It's been so inspiring to see how WAM can really take it to the next level. Maria will post on her Instagram and millions of people get to hear about it.
Now I have people saying, oh yeah, I know about the gut microbes. I know gut microbes are important for brain health.
WAM is important because they're speaking to women. When women are engaged and ignited, we're the ones that make the change happen.
So I'm so excited because that happened because people contributed, philanthropists contributed, people ran fundraisers all over, and the doctors applied for grants, and you can see what they have done, and now you get to see so many new doctors and researchers applied for new grants. We went through a heavy period of looking at what was best. We picked the 3 that were the very, very best that we could find, and you get to hear from each of them today what they're going to study, the difference that they hope to make. So I'm going to let them take it away.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Antoine Ruvo. I'm an assistant professor at the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm this year's honored recipient of the Established Investigator WAM Awards. My lab studies the brain vasculature, which is the network of blood vessels that run through your brain and that tightly regulate what can come in and out. And in Alzheimer's disease, we know that this system is dysregulated, but how is it dysregulated is still very complicated. And in our studies, we actually removed the molecule using preclinical model. We removed the molecule from the brain vasculature. And to our surprise, in female, we could improve the disease. or female animal were having better cognition and less pathology, and it had strictly no effect in male. And so we believe that this, the current project that we're going to investigate is to understand why. Why is this molecule important for women and may not be playing a role in men? I think this research shined light into sex-specific aspects of Alzheimer's disease pathology and will allow us to provide new sex-specific therapeutic avenue. It also demonstrates that Alzheimer's disease may not be the same disease in men and in women, and that we need to develop better therapies that understand the difference between the different sexes to be able to develop better therapies to treat everyone that's suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Elaine. I'm really grateful and honored to be the recipient of WAM Young Investigator Award 2025. Thank you, Maria and WAM. I'm currently the research associate from Dr. Fei-Xiong Cheng's lab at Lerner Research Institute. My research focuses on leveraging AI and various types of biological data to understand the complexity of Alzheimer's disease and why Alzheimer's disease does not affect everyone in the same way. My research in this grant focuses on understanding how men and women experience brain inflammation differently and how one immune cells in the brain called microglia respond to Alzheimer's disease. So this project includes 3 parts. First, we have already created one comprehensive digital resource using data from more than 2,200 donated human brain samples, over 900 from women and 1,300 from men. They came from individuals with Alzheimer's disease and other brain disorders, as well as individuals with Alzheimer's-related brain changes, but no actual memory problem. So this enables us to study the disease resilience, offering additional insights for potential treatment strategy for Alzheimer's disease. Second, we will develop an AI tool to study how microglia contribute to Alzheimer's disease differently in men and women, incorporating both the Alzheimer's disease and resilience samples. By comparing the disease and the resilience profiles within each sex and across sexes, we aim to identify sex-specific disease mechanism driven by microglia. Finally, we will use what we learned to suggest better and more tailored treatment options, especially for women with Alzheimer's disease. And we will check how well they could potentially work with data from large sets of real-world health records data. Thank you.
My name is Tara Da Silva, and I'm a neuroscientist at the Cleveland Clinic, and I would like to thank the Women's Alzheimer's Movement and MOSH for supporting our research on gut-brain health. As we know, women are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease, but the cause of this disparity is relatively unclear. Many cases of Alzheimer's disease involve multiple genetic and environmental risk factors. This suggests that genetic variants alone may not explain why some individuals get Alzheimer's disease and others do not. As we heard earlier today, for example, chronic metabolic inflammatory diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity, arterial sclerosis, and hypercholesteremia are all significant risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. But they all have a central theme, gut dysbiosis, or a microbiome or a gut microbiome that is dysregulated. Our gut microbiome is composed of microbes, including bacteria. And these bacteria and microbes play a crucial role in metabolizing the food we eat to produce metabolites or byproducts that influence our brain health. However, which of these metabolites or byproducts reach the brain and how they're dysregulated in Alzheimer's disease is not clear. Our research findings to date support that there are sex differences in microbial metabolites in Alzheimer's brain, and they are linked to cardiovascular and stroke. This MOSH award will allow us to further investigate these sex differences in Alzheimer's disease brain as well as blood, including models of Alzheimer's before and after black pathology or brain pathology. So what is our end goal? Our end goal is to develop blood-based biomarkers predictive of the risk of Alzheimer's disease in women to provide early intervention, either nutritional, therapeutic, or both, in the hopes of preventing the disease. Thank you.
Please give these incredible researchers another round of applause. Thank you. As you see, their research, these are seed grants that are made possible by all of you, by philanthropy, by corporate support, and then they do this research and then they go and apply to NIH for additional funding, which is a whole other story, but we're going to stay focused on that as well, in addition to trying to give out these seed grants. But we've made tremendous progress. We're going to stay at it. We're doubling down on the importance of research, particularly when there's a debate in this country right now about whether science and research is important. We're here today to say it's extremely important. It guides us. It guides us forward, and it's particularly important when it comes to looking at sex differences. This has not been something that has been a part of our country's mission. It's certainly part of ours here, and it's a mission that we are going to continue to double down on. So there. Anyway, okay. So I think it's super important not only to be talking about research, but be talking about what each and every one of us can do no matter where we are in our life. And that is really one of the great things for me about where this movement is going, is that we now have the power in our hands. When I got involved in Alzheimer's, nobody thought there was a thing you can do. Now we know there is. And for women in particular, knowing what they could do at midlife, when things start to change for them hormonally, is a key window of opportunity to take control of your physical health and your brain health. And I've been so inspired and encouraged about this new discussion, this revitalized discussion, a discussion coming out from the shadows, coming out from the closet about menopause. And this is something that when I went through menopause, nobody even spoke to me about it. My mother never spoke to me about it. My doctor never spoke to me about it. When I went to my doctor, they were like, meh, we don't know. And I was like, should I take hormones? They're like, meh, we don't have any research. And that's when I got doubly pissed. But I'm so excited that there's now a wealth of information, and one of the key drivers of that information is our next guest. And when we decided to do this forum, one of the first people I wanted to invite was Mary Claire Haver. She has been revolutionizing this discussion about the new menopause. That's her book. Buy it, give it, talk about it. And she's somebody that I love and I want everybody to know about, because she's normalizing this discussion, making it understandable, reassuring you that you're not crazy, which is always a good thing, and also giving you information that you can use today to change your tomorrow. I think that's really important. Information you can use today that can change your tomorrow. So we're going to do a fireside chat without a fire. Please welcome Mary Claire Haver. So I hope, can you hear me? Okay, great. So Mary Claire is on Instagram, has millions of followers, has this incredible best-selling book. We participated in a menopause special with Oprah like 2 months ago to try to bring this conversation to Main Street, so to speak. So one of the things I wanted Mary Claire to thank you, first of all, for being here. She speaks all over the world and really made an effort to be here with us today. So I want to thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. I wouldn't have missed it.
And so one of the things that I thought was so interesting for you was that you said that when you were educated about menopause, which wasn't much, no one ever spoke to you about the connection between menopause and brain health.
No, I had a 1-hour lecture in medical school on menopause, and it was mostly centered around cessation of fertility, end of periods, maybe a few hot flashes, and some brief mention about osteoporosis. And then I went into OBGYN, and I had an amazing residency. I delivered, I think, thousands of babies. I had a beautiful career. But in that 4-year curriculum, I had 6 hours total of 6 1-hour lectures in my second year that covered menopause. We had no clinics, nothing trained, and really it was still focused around end of periods, loss of fertility, osteoporosis, some genital urinary syndromes. But at the time, no one was connecting the dots that, we actually have estrogen receptors everywhere. In our brain, our bones, our muscles, our kidneys, our hearts, our endothelium. And I mean, it was a big learning curve for me to go through menopause, gaslight myself for 6 months, not realizing, because I never had regular periods, what was happening to me. And then when I started digging in, realizing there's all this great research out there that no one was talking about. And no one ever talked to me about the possible relationship between brain health and menopause. And so I have to thank you, because there's this butterfly effect, going on, the trend on TikTok right now. And had you not given Lisa Mosconi that grant, I never would have heard her speak at a conference in Brooklyn. And it was a lightning bolt moment for me, listening to her talk about brain health and menopause and the connections of glucose metabolism and these beautiful, images she was showing lighting up. And I thought, my God, how did I not know this? Like, how was this never taught to me, or in my CMEs? This was never focused on. So thank you for that, because that was one of the lightning bolt moments for me in my career.
And Mary Claire has been really vocal about, this is not your mother's menopause. We're talking about it differently. There are things you can now do. And one of the things that I have found that we've discovered through the Women's Comprehensive Health Center and other menopause centers that have popped up is that so many women come into this period of life. For many, it's in their 40s, others it's in their 50s, and they're thought to that it's an end of a period, or that I'm going to be irritable or frustrated, but they don't realize that so many of the memory issues that we spoke about at the breakfast today, or cognitive issues that women are experiencing, are related to hormonal changes, and that the role of hormones, HRT therapy, can help with what they're experiencing. So can you help shed some light on that for women, that, kind of cognitive issues are a normal part of menopause?
The menopause transition. So it actually starts in perimenopause, where what I like to call the zone of chaos, if all the women in the room may recognize,
and men, who live with women in the zone of chaos.
But
as my 4 brothers said, what the hell is happening?
So, if you're, for the non-scientists in the room, females are born with all of their egg supply. And our ovulations actually start in the brain at a gland called the hypothalamus. It's sensing for estrogen. Our estrogen levels naturally get low. It sends some stimulating hormones down to the ovary. We ovulate, and the whole system reboots every month, month after month after month in a healthy patient. And then in perimenopause, we actually start running out of eggs. We reach this critical egg threshold level where the signals coming from the brain no longer work the way they used to. So the brain gets very upset and starts sending more stimulating hormones in higher doses to force the ovaries to ovulate. And what used to look like this beautiful EKG-like ebb and flow of your estrogen, your progesterone, your FSH and LH now looks like spaghetti we threw against the wall, in this roller coaster-like up and down for 7 to 10 years. So perimenopause begins in the brain, and the brain doesn't like chaos.
Well, just pause a second, because that is a revolutionary finding, or unveiling, I should say, not a finding. Most people do not understand what she just said. Menopause begins in the brain.
So we see what we call brain fog. It's kind of a catch-all term, but it's really cognitive changes. So I'm having patients coming in, high functioning, they had their life managed. They had normal stresses, they had kids, they had aging parents, they had all the things, and all of a sudden these women are coming to me saying, I can't do it anymore. Nothing's changed in my environment, but I am struggling. I'm struggling at work, I'm struggling at home. They're having the memory lapses, tip of the tongue moments, they can't figure out the word. You know, that thing, you know, I would be in the OR talking about not being able to name an instrument, and I'd be like, give me that thing with the round thing on the end and the pokes, you know, so I can grab this ureter. And they're like, the Adson? You know, and I was like, so, I mean, it's...
And you think you have Alzheimer's.
You worry, you know. My mother has Alzheimer's, so I'm, you know, I have a family history, so I'm like, is this my beginning? But these are actually, normal in medicine means common, not pathologic or not harmful. And so, you know, we have to understand what normal means. It's so common. 70 to 80% of women will have distressing cognitive changes. It doesn't mean they're on the path to dementia. But, most of it will resolve, you know, once the hormones calm down in postmenopause. But for so many women, you know, this, like you said, this is a window of opportunity of getting diagnosed, of, you know, learning all the things about brain health, that Alzheimer's is not your future necessarily, that there are things we can do, thank you, Dr. Ornish, you know, looking at lifestyle changes and all the pillars of health, the same things that protect you from cardiovascular disease will protect your brain health. And this window of opportunity is, you know, also is when the inflection point for women seems to be at the menopause transition, because the loss of estrogen increases your hypertension risk. LDL goes up, LDL cholesterol goes up 19% across the transition with no changes in diet and exercise. So you start stacking the cards against you. But we can do lifestyle changes, considering HRT if you're a good candidate, to lower that risk.
So many women, I've done stories on menopause over the years at NBC, and every single time I was doing stories, women told me, you know, I went to my doctor and they gave me, they told me I was depressed and they gave me an antidepressant. Nobody ever spoke to me about HRT and how that might be, how there might be a window of opportunity for me, and how HRT might be what I need as opposed to an antidepressant.
So when the WHI, you know, we look at statistics, you know, the WHI is
That's
actually,
the Women's Health
it's just a
Initiative.
data set. I don't want to demonize. We've collected, you know, incredible data from the Women's Health Initiative. But the initial interpretation, the initial kind of fanfare around the results kind of led to this viral before viral. You know, it was the #1 medical news story of 2002 of estrogen causes breast cancer. And we basically lost a generation of research, of funding around women's health outside of reproduction because of that. Now, we've got the funding back because we're still collecting data. Everything I know about protein and frailty comes from that data. And I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm like, welcome to menopause.
No, I was talking about the importance of doctors telling you, not necessarily giving you an antidepressant.
So back to the data.
I'm postmenopausal.
We were terrified.
She's younger. I'm clear.
So my chief year of residency was when the Women's Health Initiative was announced. I was afraid, my professors were afraid. They weren't even allowed to read the study for themselves before the fanfare got released to the public. And I kind of came out of my training with this understanding that, you know, estrogen is bad and we only give it in the most severe hot flashes. She needs to be suicidal, whatever. So one of the alternatives was SSRI use, you know, antidepressants. We doubled the rate of SSRI use. So about 40% of women, depending on who you read, were on hormone therapy.
Because we didn't have research that directed us a different way.
Right. And so before the WHI, and that dropped to almost nothing. So in 2023, only 4% of women who were eligible were on hormone replacement therapy, and still driven by so much fear. So, and it turns out, if given in the window of opportunity, not only will it decrease your risk of cognitive decline, help with some of these symptoms. You know, we have great data coming out of Australia showing for the brain fog, for the reversible cognitive changes, she doesn't have to suffer. 1 in 5 women in the UK are quitting their jobs due to menopause, and so far the data showed 1 in 10 in the US, because the menopause symptoms are untreated, these women are suffering, they're miserable, and they think they can't do their jobs. And that, the economic impact of that is in the billions.
Can you just explain a little bit what the window of opportunity is? And this is obviously personalized, always important to talk to your doctor, make sure your doctor is educated in menopause, up to date with the current information. But can you explain, because so many people are confused about what is a window of opportunity? Oops, I missed the window of opportunity. Can I still go on hormones? Will I have the clarity that I once had?
So what we know is that it's the time, estrogen is very protective against multiple diseases. It protects our endothelium from atherosclerotic disease. It protects our brain health. It protects our bone health, our muscle health, it protects our gut health even. And so when we lose that protection, we see an uptick in these disease risks going. So when we talk, it's specifically in terms of atherosclerotic disease, if we start estrogen at least in the first 10 years of a woman's menopause or before the age of 60, and this is WHI data when they looked at the younger subset of patients who had started HRT at about age 50, 51 when the symptoms started, we saw a 50% per year reduction in the rate of cardiovascular disease. So the real scientists, like the people in the lab actually doing the work, have found that estrogen will slow down the progression of plaque formation and then the calcification and then narrowing of the arteries for a pretty good amount of time. So once you're on HRT, you can continue that benefit, but once those plaques start and they're calcified, HRT doesn't seem to be helpful.
So I think
that's the window.
Yeah, that's really important, once again, to talk to your doctor about your own family history. But I think what part of this discussion, what part of what you've been talking about is to, take some of the fear out of the conversation, to give you a tool that you might have thought wasn't available to you. And there are so many additional tools in addition to HRT that we now know help women at midlife when they're going through perimenopause. Mindfulness training, exercise. Can you talk a little bit about what women may have at their fingertips to take control of their health, of their brain health, because we want to remember that Alzheimer's is 20 years in your brain before you're even symptomatic. So midlife, when chronic disease sets in, when metabolic health starts to go nuts, this is a real window of opportunity on many levels for every single woman in this room and every single woman that you know. So what are the other things that maybe women here might not know is available to them?
So we look at the pillars of health, and they're pretty similar across all chronic disease risk, including brain health. And so when my patients come in initially, so I just take care of menopausal ladies, we put out the fire. We get her back to functionality, we figure it out, and then we start talking about what are the diseases that plagued your elders? What are you afraid of? And unless it's a strong family history of cancer, we're talking about loss of brain power or loss of movement. So why do women end up in long-term care facilities or having a family member having to do caregiving? It's because they can't think and they can't move for themselves. And that's their fear. So I'm like, okay, what do we know?
A well-founded fear, because most women, even though we live longer, spend the last 10 years of our lives in really bad health.
And I've my grandmother and my mother, so I'm very motivated. And so nutrition, limiting processed foods, watching your added sugars, lowering those added sugars to less than 25 grams per day has been shown to decrease inflammation levels. So I'm not talking about fruits and vegetables. I'm talking about, sugar found naturally in foods is actually fine because it's wrapped up in fiber and anthocyanins and other things that make that food healthy. But when you have processed sugars or processed foods, that's a problem. So limiting that to as much as possible, increasing the fiber in your diet, hopefully through food. And most women are getting 10 to 12 grams a day. For visceral fat, for lowering inflammation, you've got to hit 25. For cardiovascular protection in women, it's going to be 35 to 45. So that's going to be your nuts, your seeds, your legumes, and so when you're eating that much fiber, you really don't have time to go to McDonald's. Not to demonize McDonald's. I like French fries like everybody else. But so we talk about movement. So most of my patients are pretty good about walking, so they've got cardio fairly covered, and we talk about the benefits of, if she's sedentary, I encourage her to walk. If she's walking, I encourage her to get a weighted vest, because When we look at muscle health, people with more muscle live longer and healthier. You know, none of my patients want to live much longer than they're programmed to do. They don't want to live with loss of independence, which is what they see in the women in their family. So if you follow all the bros on social media, the wellness bros, they're, you know, saunas and red light therapy and all this stuff. I'm like, no,
Cold plunge, yeah.
No. Y'all don't need it. You need to eat good food, sleep a lot, you know,
Manage
move your body,
stress.
manage your stress, and manage your connection. So, you know, we talk about movement, weightlifting. So doing resistance training, getting a weighted vest, like getting her into that to preserve her function as she ages. We talk about connection, you know, friendship groups. We look at, you know, women who age well tend to have large social connection. And lots of friend groups, a mahjong group, or, you know, walking groups, book clubs, things that stimulate their mind and their ability to connect, and limiting stress. Putting up, a woman in menopause can put up a boundary like nobody's business. So all of a sudden they are like, you know, and so we see divorce rates increase in menopause, some positive, some negative, you know? And so they're able to leave a relationships that no longer serving them or double down. So it's pretty cool. So we talk about all of that in our clinic.
When you're out talking, as you do now, out speaking, organizing your own conferences, you have your own platform, what strikes you as to where the work still needs to be done, and what gives you hope?
How much women don't understand that the future of their health is really in their hands. I can tell you, because I just live on, I talk to the woman on a made-up couch in Ohio when I'm on social media. She doesn't understand that Alzheimer's is by and large preventable in so many cases. She doesn't understand the metabolic health risk associated with her brain health and how the intervention she does now can make a huge difference for how she ages later. And so I think that, for me, that's my passion. I don't think the poor, busy OBGYN, which was my job, and by the way, I was a horrible menopause provider for probably 18 years, all of women's health after reproduction does not need to be dropped in the lap of the OBGYN. We have bikini medicine to take care of, and that's a lot. That's a full-time job. I think every clinician who touches a woman should have mandatory, so that's one of my platforms, is putting a lot of pressure on the ACGME and our training programs to include women's health after uteruses. So if we go to the PubMed, which is a clearinghouse for the NIH, where we go look up studies, and we typed in the word pregnancy right now, it's about 1.2 million articles. Amazing. We need healthy pregnancy. So important, right? We type in the word menopause, and right now it's about 99,000. So that's 12 to 1. I mean, is my health, our health right now, not as important as when I was able to bear children? And I have 2 beautiful girls, thank God, and so happy about all that. But like, more women will go through menopause than have babies. If you type in the word perimenopause, the biggest window of opportunity we have, it's about 9,000. That's it. I think the focus needs to change. The funding needs to change, and we need to educate all of our clinicians.
Can you just explain, since it's that's really important. And it's a circle, right? It's not to demonize doctors, but doctors don't have the research, medical schools don't, you know, deem women's health important, NIH doesn't, political people don't. So it has to be working, as I always say, on multiple platforms. But can you explain really quickly, Dr. Mary Claire, about metabolic health? Because most people that's a new term for a lot of people. And what is my metabolic health? Why is it important? And what can I do about it? And how does it help my trajectory towards aging well?
So I like to think of it in terms of metabolic syndrome. So this is everything that can go wrong with metabolic health. So we're looking at your cholesterol levels, so your lipids, your hypertension, so what's your blood pressure. We're looking at your amount of visceral fat. So the IOM has kind of gotten rid of obesity for very good reasons as a medical term, and we're using things like abdominal circumference or waist-hip ratio, or if we have, I have an in-body scanner with electrical impedance where I'm measuring actual visceral fat. That really is a better indicator of chronic disease risk than just your weight or your BMI, okay? So I'm able to talk to my patients about that. And again, inflection point at menopause, insulin resistance, and the diabetes as well. So insulin resistance increases across the menopause transition. Our elasticity in our blood vessels, so they become more stiff. when we lose estrogen, so hypertension increases. I just read a paper, our kidney function starts to decline. The filtration rate declines in menopause. That was new for me. So my daughter is presenting, she's in medical school, proud mama, and she is presenting at the Endo 2025, the Endocrine Conference, a paper called The Metabolic Syndrome of Menopause. So where we're looking at, independently, estrogen and progesterone's relation to all the risks in metabolic disease.
This is so exciting. I want to thank Mary Claire for being on Instagram, being on socials, using her voice, educating us, having conferences, using your platform. Bravo, bravo. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Mary Claire Haver, her new book is called The New Menopause. She's a force. Support her. Thank you. She came here straight from Austin or outside of Austin, wherever, but I think it's so important. Okay, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I don't have a schedule here. So, now we're going to do our awards. Yes, we're going to do our awards. But I just think it's so exciting what Mary Claire is doing, and so many other doctors kind of democratizing women's health and making it accessible and galvanizing so many young women not to take what their mothers took for granted. I see that with my own daughters, which I think is super exciting. So now we're going to move over to this other section of the program. We're moving quick because I know everybody's busy here. These are the WAM awards. So you saw the research grants, which are the foundation of why we exist, to try to answer why 2/3 of women get Alzheimer's. And we want to answer that question with science and research. And this movement wouldn't be possible, as I said, without philanthropy, without advocacy, and without corporate support and individual support. So we're starting now for the first time at WAM to honor people in those individual spaces. And we're going to begin with an award that's very near and dear to my heart on caregiving and advocacy, because every diagnosis of Alzheimer's means that a caregiver is going to be called up. Every single diagnosis involves a family, involves a loved one, and not only changes the life of the person who's diagnosed, but changes the life of the entire family. I experienced that firsthand myself when my father was diagnosed. I have 4 brothers who assumed that I would do all of that because I was the girl, and they soon realized that that was not going to be their story. But none of us had a clue of what lay in front of us. And we wanted to honor today a woman who had that story. She was given a diagnosis, she became a caregiver, and she has turned it into advocacy. Please take a look at the video.
We met through our personal trainer. We just kept running into each other, and he was so incredibly charming, just very warm, very thoughtful. Bruce is very down to earth and super funny. Just a really great dad, there was just so much about him to like.
It was a Hollywood love story, but after 2 children and 14 years of marriage, Emma noticed something was changing.
That there just comes a point where something's not right. And I don't know what that not right is, but something is different.
In 2022, actor Bruce Willis was diagnosed with the brain disorder aphasia. But less than a year later, doctors delivered a more serious diagnosis: frontal temporal dementia.
I'm walking out of this office with a diagnosis that I don't understand. I can't even pronounce it. And I've been given a pamphlet, and that's it.
She quickly realized she would need to advocate for her husband, tackling both the diagnosis and the stigma associated with it.
I was so nervous in those early days because I was so scared about it getting out before we were ready for it to get out. Hearing how people talk about dementia in hushed tones, that was not going to work for me. There was nothing that Bruce did that could have prevented it, and there was nothing that we as a family were going to be ashamed of. We have 2 young daughters, and I never wanted them to think that this was some kind of dark family secret. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to come out, we're going to be loud about it, and we're going to make a difference. Okay, where are my advocates?
Emma Hemming Willis took to social media to share her story. She went on to become an advocate for research. She pushed for a state registry to track cases of FTD that would provide data for funding and legislation. She launched a supplement brand for women formulated to improve brain health. And she's now written a book for caregivers called The Unexpected Journey.
Caregivers need to be cared for. They cannot do this alone, and it's really important to rely on your community. And I didn't know that in the beginning.
Emma says that one of the greatest gifts for the extended Willis family was the decision to share Bruce's story openly.
Of course, there's like grief and there's sadness and there is all of that. But as hard as this diagnosis has been, there still has been so much beauty. I've grown so much from this experience. I can't believe where I started to where I am today. I just want other people to know that they can also become advocates.
The Women's Alzheimer's Movement is proud to present Emma Hemming Willis with its 2025 award for her leadership in caregiving and advocacy. Please welcome Emma to the stage. This is a woman who I have watched become a fierce champion in this space, and she deserves our respect, our care, our congratulations. Emma Hemming Willis. Bravo. There you go. Our winner. She's incredible.
Well, that video was something. I'm already crying. I haven't even started. Thank you, everyone. I am honored and truly humbled to be recognized by WAM and the Cleveland Clinic for shining this bright light on caregiving. First, I want to thank the extraordinary Maria Shriver. Maria, this award means so much to me. Your fearlessness, your advocacy, and your compassion has changed the conversation around women's brain health and Alzheimer's. You've illuminated the experience of people living with dementia and their caregivers with urgency, dignity, and hope. Thank you so much, Maria. I share this room with so many of you who are prioritizing women's brain health, researchers, clinicians, advocates, innovators, and caregivers. This is an incredibly powerful experience for me. I care deeply about this space too, which is why I co-founded Make Time Wellness, to get the world thinking seriously about women's brain health. But I began my journey as a caregiver in 2022 when my husband Bruce was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, also known as FTD. There is no treatment, there is no cure. It's the most common form of dementia for people under the age of 60. On the day Bruce got his diagnosis, we left the doctor's office with a pamphlet and a hollow goodbye. No plan, no guidance, no hope, just shock. The future we imagined simply vanished, and I was left trying to hold my family together, raise our 2 young daughters, and care for the man I love while navigating a disease I barely understood. I felt lost, isolated, and scared. What I needed in that moment, at that appointment, wasn't just medical information. I needed someone to look me in the eye and say, this feels impossible right now, but you will find your footing, you will survive this, and you will grow because of it. The trauma of that office visit inspired me to write The Unexpected Journey, which comes out this September from Maria's imprint, The Open Field. The book is the roadmap I wish someone had handed me on the day in 2022. I wrote it for other caregivers who are desperate for answers, aching for support, and wanting to be seen, and wondering how they're going to make it through. I've had access to world-class experts because of who Bruce is, and I know that's a privilege. So I didn't want to keep that information to myself. One of the most important and surprising truths I learned while writing the book, and something echoed by 25 experts and specialists I interviewed for it, was this: the best thing that you can do for the person that you love is take care of yourself. Why? Because the ecosystem of care doesn't work unless the caregiver is cared for. And who is the caregiver exactly? Everyone in here already knows who that is, and it's women. Researchers estimate that 70% of dementia caregivers are women. That's 70%. It's important we keep women at the center of our dementia advocacy because women usually bear the brunt of caregiving without pay, recognition, or support. I have a megaphone and resources that others don't. That makes me responsible to do more. And it's led me to political advocacy. Over the past 2 years, I've been supporting legislation, resolutions, and proclamations across the country to raise FTD awareness. I'm just one of many people doing this work, and together we are making progress. This isn't how I saw my future in 2022. I definitely didn't choose this path, but I do choose how I walk it. Sorry. With intention and purpose, just like Bruce has always lived his life, and just like I hope our daughters will live theirs. No two caregiving journeys are the same, but they are all stitched together by heartbreak, resilience, and love. Thank you, Maria, again, for this incredible honor. And thank you to everyone. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. You are moving this mission forward every single day. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Should I take my word?
I just want to say that this book that Emma has written and is publishing, you have a card in your bags to pre-order it. I hope each and every one of you will support her. We'll give this to anybody that you know. I know that we at the Cleveland Clinic and WAM are going to just push this out to every single person. It's a gift that she has written it. She is sharing a deeply vulnerable and personal story with the hope that it will help others who received a diagnosis. This is a profile in courage. This is somebody who's taken her pain and turning it into purpose, and I could not be more proud of you for finding your voice and just stepping out. And I feel like your older sister, just like beaming with pride at all you're doing. Bravo. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Emma. The Unexpected Journey comes out in September, and Larry and Camille, we should have it here and give it to everybody who comes in, who finds themselves in the caregiving role. And all of the statistics say every single one of us will end up as a caregiver or needing care at some point in our lives. So I'm so proud to have honored, and we're also proud to honor Emma for her incredibly honorable work. So. And now I want to talk about leadership in philanthropy and activism and advocacy. Elaine Wynn is all of that and more. Several months ago, I called her and said, I want to honor you for your support of the WAM Prevention Center and the work of the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. And without hesitation, she said, yes, I'll be there. I want to support this. I want to be honored, which was not really like her, right? She didn't want to get a lot of honors, so to speak. And I wanted to honor her. I'd known her for many decades. I had seen the extraordinary work she had done and was doing across so many platforms. But she had stepped up to honor the work that we were doing at WAM when many others had not. She stepped up and said, I believe in what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. I believe in women's health and research. and I want to champion what you're doing. And I didn't ask her to do it. I didn't ask her for any money. She came to me. And as anybody looking to raise money or looking to do anything know, that's like unheard of. And I was so moved, and she was very matter of fact. Of course I would do this. Of course I would advocate for this. And obviously we lost Elaine. Her family is here with us today. And I've known Kevin and Jillian since they were little. I'm everybody's older sister now. I thought we were all the same age, and somehow I got older. But, and they had a beautiful memorial yesterday that I was forced to miss, and I wrote to them and said, is it okay if I go to the Pope, to the Mass? I think your mother would have wanted that, and they both responded, of course she would want you to do that, and please pray for her. And I prayed for her there yesterday and for your family. And I would like you all to take a look at this film on the incredible, legendary, one-of-a-kind Elaine Wynn. Her life and her legacy transcend the extraordinary. As an architect of change, Elaine Wynn was a visionary, dedicated to uplifting lives, opening doors, and creating opportunities. An astute businesswoman, she had boundless ambition to build and improve. She helped shape modern-day Las Vegas, transforming the hotel industry and the city itself with her creative innovations at the Mirage, the Bellagio, Wynn, and Encore resorts. She was an ardent philanthropist with a deep passion for all the arts and for education. Deeply committed to helping students living in poverty, Elaine Wynn was devoted to communities and schools, where she expanded the program's reach to over 1.7 million students across 2,900 schools in 26 states. And she was a relentless deal maker, bringing people of all walks together for a common purpose.
The thing I'd be most proud of would be what I'd call my in-kind contribution, which would be the time and the leadership in working with lots of people to get things done.
But at Elaine Wynn's core lay her deep devotion to friends and family. She became interested in neurological health when her mother, Lee Pascal, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. To help spur research, Elaine endowed a chair in her mother's name at the Ruvo Center for Brain Health. Years later, her family felt the impact of brain disease once again when Elaine lost her older brother, Michael, to a neurological condition, and soon thereafter, her close friend, Cecile Richards, to a brain tumor. Recognizing the destructive nature of brain disorders on patients and loved ones alike, Elaine Wynn stepped in to ensure future generations would benefit from the treatments that only research and science can provide. We thank Elaine Wynn for her unwavering leadership in supporting women's health. She gave $1 million to further research and to help the Women's Alzheimer's Movement Prevention Center. And she believed wholeheartedly in the work we are doing and the work we hope to do. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now without her. We will remember her as a warrior, a visionary, a friend, and a woman who believed that with hard work, knowledge, and kindness, anything is possible. Here to accept the award in Elaine's honor is her granddaughter, Marlo Early, who she was so proud of and who has an interest herself in women's health and research. And we're so honored, Marlo, that you are going to be here and that you're keeping your grandmother's work alive. And the Wynn Family Foundation supported this event today. And I know Elaine is looking down on us today and going, you go, girl, you go. And use whatever my legacy can to spur others, which was always her passion, wanting to inspire others to follow in her footsteps and make the world better. That was her yes every single day. So please welcome Marlo Early.
Hi, everybody. All right. I want to thank Maria, Larry, and Camille for honoring my grandmother with this beautiful tribute and leadership award. And thank you to my beautiful family for being here. My grandmother asked me to accept this award on her behalf when it became clear that she would not be able to do so herself. Still, I never imagined that she would no longer be with us today. In the months since her passing, we've been blessed with abundant opportunities to reflect on her life, gatherings where friends and family shared stories of Elaine, Mushi to the lucky ones, and the many ways in which she touched and shaped our lives. This exchange of stories ushers me through the deepest valleys of loss. I've found that at the end of a loved one's life, people are drawn to speak eagerly and often of beginnings. Opening these doors to the past, where we stand at the starting line and look towards the finish, allows us to revel in the space in between, that of an extraordinary life. Today, I'd like to talk about some of my grandmother's beginnings with you. Mushi's story as an advocate for women's brain health began more than a decade ago, with an investment honoring her mother, Lee Pascal, to advance research and brain imaging in Parkinson's disease. 5 years ago, she doubled down on that commitment by establishing the Lee Pascal Endowed Chair of Clinical Trials to further advance research and treatment breakthroughs. This philanthropic journey began at the intersection of curiosity, family legacy, and faith in what her dear friends, Larry and Camille, had built. Over a year ago, our stories converged. My own growing devotion to advocacy for women's health access became a shared passion in our lives. We would come home from our separate doctor's appointments, first complaining about what hurt, but always making our way to the why of it all. Why are doctors addressing symptoms instead of root causes? Why don't we have more information about conditions affecting half of the population? Why don't we know more about how the medications we consume so liberally go to work on our bodies? And most importantly, if we who have the greatest access to the best healthcare providers are still struggling to get the answers we need, how are the women at large navigating a system that was never designed to work for us? Anyone who knows my grandmother understands that questions like these aren't just cause for reflections, they are calls to action. Leading up to the Power of Love event last year, my grandmother decided to further her investment in the Ruvo's work at the Cleveland Clinic. She shared with me that she wanted to make another contribution to the clinic, and she wanted to tell Larry at the event. Because Maria was also in attendance, she felt this could be a natural moment to support her work with the clinic as well. And knowing that this would spark a burst of joy, she asked me what I thought about giving half of her gift to WAM. Trust me, I was thrilled, but I had to ask, why not all of it? She was never very good at saying no to me, so Elaine Wynn went all in with WAM. And thus began a new chapter, engaging more deeply in women's health research and access alongside Maria and the Cleveland Clinic. My grandmother's journey with healthcare was a deeply personal one. It was about family. She first engaged with the Ruvo Center to honor her mother's battle with Parkinson's. She then became more devoted to brain health research when her brother developed dementia. But this most recent step, becoming a champion for women's health, reflects the very ethos with which she approached all of her philanthropic work: legacy and longevity. This commitment to WAM was a gift to her daughters, her granddaughters, and to every woman who will benefit from better access, better information, and better care. As with everything she did, this was just the first step in a long journey, a beginning. My grandmother is not with us anymore, but we will honor her legacy by working together to uplift women and girls by striving for better health. Thank you again, Maria, Larry, and Camille. It is an honor to accept this award on her behalf.
Why not all of it?
That's not easy. It's not easy because being the granddaughter, Elaine has left a great legacy behind with her family, who are all beyond incredible. She's got a solid, good family, and the legacy will continue, and we are eternally grateful for everything that each of you have done, and we are very proud to be able to call you all our friends, so thank you for that. Thank you. Having family is important. Having family support is equally as important, and that leads us to our next award, where family has really placed a great emphasis on what you believe. This next award is called the MOSH Award. Sounds kind of familiar in some ways. But the MOSH Award is, it's an award because the proceeds from what is called a MOSH bar, which I don't know if you saw the samples as you were walking in. If not, you may have them as you're walking out. The MOSH Award presents money raised through these bars, and then we get to reap the benefits of the proceeds from the MOSH bars. By the way, I'm not a bar person. Well, okay, so not like a protein bar person. But bar, yes, okay. We have to promote what pays the bills. Okay, so, but bars, as far as protein bars go, I have to say this is the most delicious bar I've ever had. So if you need something on the go, grab a MOSH bar. It's not only going to benefit you when you're starving, but it will also benefit brain health because the proceeds come back to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement and to the prevention clinic here. So I know you want to. So it gives us great pleasure. We're going to present this next award.
You have to do the film.
Okay, then we'll watch the film. Sorry.
My mom has always been obsessed with protein bars, so much so that we made her give it up for Lent. But she would always complain. Every day, she would complain that it gave her a headache or a stomach ache. So I finally said to her, why don't you just create a bar that has everything that you want in it? So that's how MOSH was born.
Brain health has been a Shriver family passion ever since Maria's father, Sergeant Shriver, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2003.
I learned about Alzheimer's at a young age, and I think the reason why I feel a calling to help is because we do know that there are things you can do today that can help your brain tomorrow.
This is straight off the press, baby. Woo! Brand new MOSH.
MOSH is really an on-the-go superfood nutrient-dense protein bar, but that's made specifically for your brain.
The mother-son vision for MOSH was to create a brain-healthy protein bar that could raise money for women-based Alzheimer's research.
We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Alzheimer's research.
And utilize every platform possible to educate people of all generations about the importance of nutrition, exercise, and social engagement on brain health.
There's so many things that you can do that have a massive impact on your overall brain and body health. And that's why at MOSH we're not just here selling a what, it's a mission. So we really have a why behind the brand.
That on the market, 12 grams of protein, high in fiber.
We've always been mission driven. It's our central focus and will continue to be. It's what unites the team for a common purpose and is our North Star.
I think moving forward, that sense of mission has already resulted in more than $250,000 to WAM for research, and establishing the WAM MOSH grant for the study of nutrition on brain health.
And I'm especially excited that this year we're also giving out our first inaugural MOSH grant.
I'm extremely proud to kind of continue on my grandfather's legacy, that we've been able to raise so much money for Alzheimer's, that we've been able to educate so many people about Alzheimer's and brain health research. I look forward to continuing this journey and continuing to make donations and make such an impact in the brain health research space.
For its mission, vision, and innovation in education, and for the impact it has on brain health for future generations by funding Alzheimer's research, WAM recognizes MOSH, the brain brand, with the 2025 Corporate Leadership Award.
Before we give the award, ladies and gentlemen, I grew up in a house that Angie and Louie always taught me. It's ladies and gentlemen. But up until 7 years ago, when Maria came to Camille and I, it was always gentlemen. There was no, when Maria asked a question, she said, I don't understand, when I go for a neurological workup, why is it that I get the same workup as a man? Why is it that they don't ask me about my menopausal, post-menopausal, they don't ask me about my hormones? I said, I don't know the answer to that, but I know Cleveland Clinic will find out. And after 2 years of research, we launched the WAM program. This all started by putting ladies where they belong first. Ladies and gentlemen, the research up until that time was all about men. None of the ladies in this room. One individual changed that. It was a conversation that Maria and I had with Camille. I can promise you the work that's being done in this very building is extraordinary. It was the first one on the planet Earth to recognize the importance of women because of Maria. Today, many of you came up to me individually and said, thank you because we helped a loved one, we helped you, we helped. I want everybody to understand the significance of what the Cleveland Clinic does. We bring the world-class people, the world-class doctors. We have the most vibrant programs. And every time any one of you asks Camille or I to see a doctor to come here, we lose money. It's just a fact. Insurance reimbursements, without philanthropy, without the Wynn family, without my sister, friend, best buddy, Elaine, helping us early on, and so many of you in this room, we would not have the quality of medicine we have. So I'm not supposed to talk about fundraising, but I'm sorry, it's in my blood. And there's a card on your table that will talk to you when you leave. But each and every one of you, like Camille said earlier, you got to jump into the game. You got to be a part of what's happening here. We are changing brain health for women. Yes, it started with Maria. We took that little mustard seed and it's growing. But without your support, it will not happen. And that's why Maria's son, Patrick Schwarzenegger, when they started MOSH, they decided rather than put the money in their pocket or buy something else, they decided to give it to us at WAM. And it's been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I give them out as gifts. Thank you. We give them out as gifts. We give them here to this center. And I know once you taste them, you'll understand how important it is for brain health, and it helps us. So Maria.
There they are. That's the team.
Come on up here, team.
We just wanted to say that it's so important, as we said, philanthropic, caregiving, advocacy, but getting corporate America involved in this issue is critical. I go to so many corporations and they say to me, we already do brain health. I mean, we already do breast cancer. That's women's health. I said, no, there's more to women's health than just breast cancer. And they're like, what, really? And I'm like, oy. So I'm hoping that every year we'll be able to honor a new corporation for their involvement in this issue. So we're open to supporting any corporation who wants to support this life-changing work. And this is the team that does it day in, day out. They live this mission. They work 24 hours, 7 days a week. A startup is not easy, and they do it because they love it. So they're the true champions. I want them to speak. Jeff?
Thank you so much. It's a tremendous honor to accept the Corporate Leadership Award on behalf of MOSH, the Brain brand. At MOSH, we're deeply inspired by the mission of the Women's Alzheimer's movement and proud to play a part in advancing brain health awareness and innovation. We're committed to continuing this vital work together, and thank you again for recognizing MOSH. It means a great deal to all of us. Thank you.
He meant to introduce Laura and Sephora, right, Jeff? That's what
Yes, indeed.
Yes, he did. Thank you. I wanted to just, always great women behind the men. There you go. Boy. Thank you, Jeff. I also want to recognize my son, Christopher Schwarzenegger, who's here today supporting me. Christopher, I'm introducing you, sweetheart. Okay. So charming. Anyway, and he and his partner there are working on a film about the caregiver's journey. So I think one of the things I've discovered in this work is that you need to be operating on so many cylinders. You need to be working with doctors who are out in the field and treating patients. You need to be supporting researchers. You need to be on social media. You need to be supporting caregivers. You need to be talking about advocacy. You need to go out and get corporate sponsors. You need to get people involved in philanthropy, right? You need to just involve everybody, and that's the beauty, I think, of today, is involving everybody and letting everybody, I hope, know that their role is important. No one's role is more important than anybody else's. We need everybody. I always say we need people to advocate on Capitol Hill. We need people to share their journeys like Emma. We need philanthropists like Elaine. We need corporations like MOSH. We need researchers like you saw here. We need doctors like Mary Claire and so many of the other doctors. We need advocates. This morning we had the Coalition for Women's Brain Health gather. We had so many people who are working in this space talk about what they're doing. For me, this is an exciting time in this space. Not a scary time, as you're told by the media. Not a scary time, but a time to double down. And so we always end these events by letting about 10 people, we call them our rappers, tell you what they're doing, tell you what's going on. They go through it really quickly. So today is no different. I want to introduce the WAM rappers who are going to tell you what they're doing, what you can get excited about, what you can get involved in, what you can tell your friends about. So I don't know who's leading, but stand up. Oh, go, hit it.
Today's journey, develop courage, splash on a smile, be who I want to be, not afraid of who I am becoming. To awake at night fearful of forgetting important and precious things like people, dates, times, appointments. I am not in control. Please, God, help me. Thoughts jumble, words disappear, times mix up, promises go astray. When I hear, where are you coming? Eyes water, stomach churns, humbled in disbelief. I know I have done it again. I'm Nancy Nelson, a mother of 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters, and 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and since then, with MCI. To hear your brain is compromised and that you may be following in your father's footsteps is a scary diagnosis, because thoughts and memories are how we know ourselves. So when our mind no longer works like it used to, we feel scared, hesitant, and really unsure of ourselves. Our personality begins to change, and along with that jolt to my reality comes something else. Something special happened since my first diagnosis 12 years ago. I wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. in most mornings, enlightened by someone far greater than Nancy Nelson and an Alzheimer's diagnosis. The words and phrases from heaven above guide me daily. I am not alone. Profound words come into my brain, to a handheld pen, and I write insightful poems. They help me to understand what's Alzheimer's, where am I in it, and how can I help others? How do I help myself? All the while we hear over and over again, there is no cure. Though I think where there is belief and positivity, there is hope and possibilities. And what is to be is largely up to me. Thank you, my two daughters beside me and Kat Hartley. A hearty thank you to Maria. I hold you so high in regard, and to WAM and all of you here today for hearing me today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robbie Diaz Brinton. I lead the Center for Innovation in Brain Science at the University of Arizona, and I met Maria, oh my, so long ago, and she visited my laboratory, and at that time, we had not entered the field of data science, and through the WAM support of our research, we entered into data science, and our latest outcome of that initial investment is a combination therapy that slows the rate of decline in Alzheimer's disease by 40 to 60%, enabling people to live independently for a greater period of time. So we're on it, and we're doing two other things. One is we have developed a formulation that can be an alternative to menopausal hormone therapy to sustain brain health and while protecting breast health. We call that formulation PhytoSerb. And last but far from least, how many of women in the room have given birth? During the third trimester of pregnancy, you made a molecule called allopregnanolone that promotes the brain's development and increase in size by 4-fold. We are taking that molecule that promotes infant brain health and for 2 clinical trials to promote regeneration of the Alzheimer's brain and the Parkinson's brain. We've had tremendous initial findings that that molecule that you made is doing great work in the Alzheimer's brain and the Parkinson's brain. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Chrastil. I'm at the University of California, Irvine, and I am a former WAM recipient. But in addition to that, like many of you just mentioned, I'm also a mother. And while I was preparing to become a mother and planning a pregnancy, we looked into the literature and realized that there's very little about women's brain changes during pregnancy. So although Dr. Haver mentioned about 1 million studies on pregnancy, there's only about a handful that actually have to deal with the brain and how the brain changes. And so with my research partner, Emily Jacobs, we decided to scan my brain during pregnancy every 2 to 3 weeks, before, during, and after, for up to about 2 years out, and to see what happens to a brain while you're pregnant. We found some profound changes, some things that were long-lasting and have continued, some things that were short-term, but it's a remarkable change and a time of change in a woman's brain that has really gone unrecognized. We're starting to understand that menopause changes the woman's brain, but pregnancy, in addition, is a really major life change that can have profound impacts. And long-term, with this sort of advocacy about women's brain health that we're talking about today, understanding more about the potential impacts of postpartum depression, whether pregnancy can change risk factors for later dementia or other things, or be protective. We want to understand more, and there's so little that we know, and there's just a profound missing data that we really want to fill in the gaps. So thank you so much for your support and for this advocacy in women's brain health research.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dean Ornish. I'm the director of the Preventive Medicine Research Institute and the clinical professor of medicine at UCSF. And you know, we tend to think of advances in medicine as being a new drug, a new laser, something really high-tech and expensive. And I think our unique contribution has been using very high-tech, state-of-the-art scientific measures to prove how powerful these very simple and low-tech and low-cost lifestyle interventions can be, like what we eat, how we respond to stress, how much exercise we get, and how much love and support we have. And over time, we found these same lifestyle changes can not only just prevent, but even reverse the progression of many of the most common and costly chronic diseases, most recently Alzheimer's. And I'm very grateful to Larry and Camille Ruvo and to Maria Shriver for being the first people to help fund this research at a time when it was just a wild idea. And that's why what you're doing as philanthropists is so important, because the major foundations and NIH, they do incremental funding. Like if you want to see it, is it 500 milligrams or 250 milligrams better? But if you're doing something that people think is impossible, it's very hard to get funding. And without the funding, you can't show it works. And if they don't think it works, they don't want to fund it. So what you're doing is really important. And what we found was the first randomized controlled trial showing that any intervention, in this case, these same lifestyle interventions, could not only stop but often reverse the progression of early stage Alzheimer's. Using 3 of the 4 measures of cognition and function that are used in the drug trials showed improvement, whereas all 4 got worse in the usual care group. And these findings are giving many people new hope and new choices that they didn't have before. And that's why I do research. You know, properly done, working with the top collaborators, we can redefine what's possible, shine a light in that darkness, and give many people new hope and new choices they didn't have before. And I'm happy to report that one of the major insurance companies will be announcing in a couple of months they're going to cover our program for Alzheimer's. We hope that Medicare won't be far behind, and then we can really make it available to everyone. None of that would have been possible without what's happening here, so please be generous with WAM and with the Lou World Brain Health Center. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Kendra. I'm so pleased to be here today. I work at MJHS Sonora and at NYU in New York City. Women represent approximately 60% of unpaid caregivers for people who are living with dementia. Wives, partners, daughters, granddaughters, and family relatives carry the load, and that holds true across demographics, regardless of your race, ethnicity, economic status, or geography. So how does this responsibility affect women? They experience high rates of stress, depression, anxiety, cardiovascular issues, and chronic conditions because of self-neglect. And I see many of you nodding. You know what that means. But what is amazing about music is that it can help to reduce caregiver burden in very, very many ways. I've been funded by WAM, thank you, Maria, and I'm investigating the use of a music-based psychosocial intervention. I've been teaching unpaid caregivers how to use music during their care to soothe the person that they're caring for, to create new memories, and to create new times of joy. After 6 weeks of incorporating music-assisted caregiving techniques like singing into their daily care, people with dementia are less depressed, they're less anxious, they have higher quality of life. And what do you think this means for the caregiver? Less caregiver burden. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to WAM for supporting early PhD researchers like myself. I've been given an amazing platform to grow as a leader and access to resources to design caregiving strategies for the American families, especially for women, and I am so, so very grateful. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Levine, and I am a postdoctoral fellow here at the WAM Prevention and Research Center at Ruvo. I received a Young Investigator Award last year, and my primary research interest is in developing cognitive tasks that are widely accessible and time and cost effective, that are sensitive to the earliest signs of Alzheimer's disease. I'm particularly interested in spatial navigation, that is our ability to move from point A to point B, because getting lost is a common symptom of Alzheimer's disease, and women tend to be worse navigators than men. My WAM-funded study examines whether women's performance on a spatial navigation task is more sensitive to Alzheimer's disease biomarkers than our traditional measures of episodic memory. Data collection is currently underway, and I plan to present the results at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference next year. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge Maria and WAM. Maria really just practices what she preaches in terms of supporting women in research. I had a baby in January, and WAM was incredibly supportive and easy to work with throughout the entire process. So I just want to say thank you to WAM for your support of not only women's health research, but also the women behind the research. Thank you.
I'm over here. We're jumping around. Emily Jacobs. I am a neuroscientist and professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara, where I lead the Bowers Women's Brain Health Initiative. And I am also here as a proud board member of the Coalition for Women's Brain Health. So thank you all for having us and for paying attention. The American novelist, Henry James, encourages us to live our lives finely aware and richly responsible. If James is correct, that means we can fail in two ways, by being obtuse or negligent. I think all of us in this room live up to the Jamesian ideal. We are here united by this common belief that we can make real progress in women's brain health. And that means it will take a global shift in science culture and a radical reimagining of how science is done. So at the Women's Brain Health Initiative, to us, that means a very science-first, ego-last, very collaborative effort. We are using the combined power of the University of California system to shine a floodlight on women's brain health, building the largest and most comprehensive collection of brain health data ever acquired for women. And this morning I talked a little bit about one flagship project, our brain bank, but in the minutes remaining, I just want to zoom in on one moonshot project that was mentioned earlier, which is our global maternal brain project. When we published Liz's data last year, this was the first map of the human brain across pregnancy. Think about that for a moment. In 2024, neuroscientists didn't understand how the human brain changed across pregnancy. It's not because women are too complicated. It's not because pregnancy is like the Gordian knot of biology. It's a consequence of the fact that we don't pay attention to women's bodies. And it turns out there's so many mysteries lying in that 40-week gestational window that have implications for clinical care, yes, but also for advancing our basic understanding of the human brain. We think that in that 40-week period, there are clues that can tell us how the human brain is capable of levels of neuroplasticity in its second, third, fourth decade of life that neuroscientists never thought was possible. How do we capitalize on that basic science to drive the science forward is what the Global Maternal Brain Health Project will do by following 1,000 first-time mothers with precision imaging and the power of AI to understand this transition. We think it can give us insights into things like postpartum depression before behavioral symptoms actually manifest. And we're excited to work together with, again, collaborative science, dissolving the silos and coming together to make a change. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Amelia Hay, and I represent the innovation arm of AARP. You might be surprised to learn that AARP has an innovation arm that looks at the latest advancements of cutting-edge technology, but we do. And in fact, innovation is how we have remained relevant for over 65 years. So global aging, the population is aging. And as technology expands, the way we age is changing every day. But aging is still very challenging for us. And for some, it is really scary. And that's why AARP created the Age Tech Collaborative from AARP to source and support startups with solutions that make aging easier for everyone. This is our mission. We included the word everyone in our mission statement because it's not just the aging person that is affected. It's their families, their friends, and the caregivers too. The startups are the bedrock of the Age Tech Collaborative, and it's our job to surround them with investors and companies that are going to help them scale and succeed. For example, we have Tembo Health here. They offer a platform that connects those with dementia and their caregivers to care navigators for their care journey and to the community services that they need. Another one is NeuroTrack, and they have a tool that distinguishes cognitive impairment from normal aging, thereby aiding the healthcare providers in early diagnosis and intervention. By the year 2050, 1 in 3 people globally will be over the age of 50. And this demographic shift has an enormous impact on women because, as we know, they currently live longer than men, and they are usually the caregivers. This is why AARP is committed to finding companies that can leverage technology to support the aging population. Today, we proudly support WAM at Cleveland Clinic on the great work they're doing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Caroline Morgan-Burchuk. I lead women's health at McKinsey & Company. And as a physician, as a mom, as a woman pregnant in my 40s, I think a lot about brain health and cognition these days. And Dr. Mary Claire, I'm going to do a PubMed search for perimenopause and pregnancy and see what comes up with that. Report back to you on the results. Four. So at McKinsey, I spend my time building the business case for women's health. So the business case for doing the right thing. So what is the business case? It turns out for all of women's health, if we were to close the gap between women and men, we would unlock a $1 trillion annual opportunity in global GDP. About a quarter of that is women's brain health. So what does that mean? That means $250 billion that today is not in the pockets of women, of families, of communities, because we have not closed the gap between women and men for health. So why is this market untapped? What are we not doing about this? So I'm gonna walk you through FIGS, which is a fashion company, so bear with me for a second. But FIGS makes scrubs and for healthcare providers, and I own a bunch of them now. And they, to flash forward a bit, they're a billion-dollar company, they're a public company, and they had a really hard time getting early investment. And this is a common story for female-founded companies, for companies in women's health, for companies where investors just say, I don't really see the market there. It seems like kind of a niche. Well, FIGS persisted because they knew that 70 to 80% of healthcare providers are women. 10% of the entire US workforce are women. And it turns out women care what they wear to work every day. So not a niche market, but it was an overlooked and it was an underinvested one. And so this is the same dynamic in women's brain health. It's overlooked, it's underinvested, and underestimated. And so what can we do about this, right? Well, really 5 things. We need to count women, we need to study women, we need to care for women, we need to include all women, and we need to invest in women. So what does that mean? So count women. It's really hard to value a market if you have no idea how many people are in it. We don't know how many women are living with Alzheimer's disease. It's underdiagnosed, it's undercounted, and women have more delayed diagnoses. We need diagnostics and data specific for women. Study women. We need women represented in trials. We need women represented in the data. Data is not disaggregated in many places outside of WAM and the Cleveland Clinic, and therefore we just don't know how women respond differently to treatment. And we need to care for women. Our clinical practice guidelines, Dr. Mary Claire mentioned the ACGME. It's not that the data aren't available, it's that data aren't included in our practice guidelines. And so we don't have sex differences in how we treat women and how disease progresses. It's just not specific to us. And then we need to include all women. So it turns out there's not a single clinical trial that has resulted recently that would have a difference in mortality that just closing health disparities would, reducing health disparities. And we need to invest in women, and we need to deploy capital into tech, into products, into care models for women. If we count women, if we study women, if we care for women, if we include all women, and if we invest in women, we will improve health outcomes, and we will also unlock value. We are not a niche market. This is a $250 billion opportunity.
My name is Yvette Fernandez, and I'm a former Alzheimer's patient caregiver and a current patient at the WAM Prevention and Research Center. Almost 11 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in Alaska. Her diagnosis was a shock and devastating to our family. Never in a million years did we think this was a possibility in our family, especially for my mom. She was strong, vibrant, and vivacious. Shortly after my parents moved here to Las Vegas, I also moved here to help my dad with my mom and to be with her in her final years. My mom was a patient at the Ruvo Center for Brain Health. She passed almost 3.5 years ago. Her 7.5-year illness was traumatic, and I'm still working through her passing. Her illness made me realize that we are not invincible. Taking care of our health, bodies, and mind are vital. Through the Ruvo Center, I learned about the WAM Center. I'm proud to now be an ambassador for WAM's prevention program. Through this program, I have learned that we can prevent 45% of all current Alzheimer's cases through healthy lifestyle changes, exercise, nutrition, and mental well-being. As we've learned today, exercise at least 3 times a week, eat an anti-inflammatory diet, limit industrialized grains and sugar, sleep at least 7 to 8 hours, find ways to calm your mind and regulate your emotions, especially when you are stressed. It is amazing that we live in a time that we have control, 45% control of preventing this awful disease. I do not want to get Alzheimer's, and I'm grateful that because of the WAM Center and its research, I hope to prevent this disease from happening to me. I look forward to a future without Alzheimer's. Thank you, Maria Shriver. Thank you, Camille and Larry Ruvo and the Cleveland Clinic for creating this program to better understand why women are more at risk for Alzheimer's and how to prevent this disease. As Camille Ruvo recently stated, through continued research, it is the WAM Center's hope that one day prevention will be as widely accepted as an approach to brain health as it is for heart disease. Thank you.
Okay. Bravo. Thank you, everybody, for letting us know about your work. I hope everybody here has been inspired by the work that is ongoing and going with your support. There's an envelope on the table. This year we want to start a WAM community grant. That's if you want to give $10, $25, $1 million, $5,000, we're going to match whatever you give here. And our hope is to include next year a WAM community grant, which is funding that comes from people on the front lines of their own lives who believe in the work we're doing. There's been a lot of thanks to WAM today. I want to recognize Erin Stein, Sandy Gleistein, and Laurel Ann, who are WAM. They do the work just like you saw the people at MOSH up here. WAM is Erin and Sandy and Laurel Ann day in, day out, who breathe this, who work with the Coalition on Brain Health, who have been involved in growing this organization, who are deeply loyal to it and work day in, day out with this center and with people all over the world who contribute to WAM and want WAM support. We get calls every single day. Where do I take my mother? I need a neurologist. I'm in New York. I'm in New Jersey. It's a full-time job for all of them to field the calls, to make sure that we're taking care of people. And so I want to recognize the extraordinary work that they do day in and day out to make this possible. Also, that's true. So they are WAM. They're WAM on the ground. They're WAM in the air. They're WAM everywhere. Eli Lilly sponsored this streaming, and I heard it looks really good so that we could bring this message out beyond Las Vegas. As I said at the breakfast, what happens in Las Vegas, we don't want to stay in Las Vegas. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I hope you learned something. I hope you made some connections. I hope you think about your brain health, think about the researchers who toil in offices and laboratories around the country. I hope you think about the great work being done here and all of the different parts of these partnerships that are necessary to make something successful in our world today. I want to once again thank the Elaine Family Foundation, Elaine's family, for being here, for all of your support. Emma, I want to thank you for coming and letting us honor you. MOSH, I want to thank you for all the great work and all the hard work that you do day in, day out. And to any other people who want to be our corporate sponsors moving forward, to other people who want to advocate and do leadership, We're open for anybody who wants to partner with us. We want to get this done. I want to see a result in my lifetime. I'm in a hurry. I want to find a cure, and this work energizes me. I'm deeply committed to it. I have faith that we will find a cure together if we work together and collaborate, which is the name of the game. So thank you all for coming today. God bless you, and have a great day. Thank you.